So, thank you, Bjarke, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
You landed this morning?
Yes.
Good. So we are very happy that you are here. I will make a short introduction in order to understand where we are and what we are doing here. First of all, I would like to thank Jose Aguirre that he helped to set up this meeting, and he's a great designer. He collaborated with us in the Venice Biennale some years ago, and we are still keep thinking what to do. I would like to thank also Barcelona Global. We have his president here. Thank you for helping to bring the right people here. And all the president of Construmat, Ana Vallès and Soriguer is here. And so many important guests that I will not mention all of you, sorry. Except Francesca Bria. Except Francesca Bria. The CEO from the Barcelona City Council. So I would like, so today we are here basically because we are launching or relaunching Valldaura as a project, and we are launching the new Master in Advanced Ecological Buildings that we are going to start next September. So I asked Bjarke that, by the way, he was here like in 2008, maybe, yes. Like 10 years ago when the house was almost falling down.
Yes.
And then we were, with the effort of all the IAAC, the directors of IAAC, we have Areti and we have Thomas here and Silvia, we has been able to develop a project here.
But I'm happy to see the geese and the chicken are still here.
Yeah. They are the same that were here from 2008. Yeah, they are the same. So IAAC some years ago decided that we would like not only to talk about or to design the future of architecture of cities. IAAC was founded in 2001 with the support of Andreu Mas-Colell, because he had an idea that he said that the countries that are leaders should bring people to study with them, and they should study mostly in English, because then they will be very international. So we believe so much that we make all of this following that idea. So we start with this project 2001 with the idea of how digital technologies will change the way we make cities and we make architecture. And that's why we founded the IAAC, and we were working with Neil Hassenfield from MIT. He was one of the inventors of the Internet of Things, so that's why we were already working at that time, 18 years ago, with these kind of things. He was the founder of the Fab Lab network, and now we start in Barcelona, one of the Fab Labs. But then at some moment, we found this place with Lucas Capelli, that maybe somewhere, and then we thought that we would like not only to do education in an idea of learning by doing, so architects not only designing, but architects fabricating. But the next step should be architects living their own experience. So let's say if we imagine that we should live in an environment where we can produce our resources in order to be more rich, in order to empower ourselves, cities should tend to self-sufficiency, because people will be richer if they produce their own energy, their own food, and they do kind of process of reindustrialization. So the place where we wanted to experiment all of this is this place. So we found this place, we were able to buy with the support of the Spanish government. We got some grant from Zapatero's government, and we study the story of this place. And someone asked, and what is this place, where Valldaura is coming from? And Valldaura, so this is not the monastery. Bjarke said, the monastery ruins are somewhere over there, because in the year 1150 was founded the first Cister monastery in Catalonia, and it was found here in Valldaura. Valldaura means Vallis Laure. So this was founded 1 year before Poblet. But the monks were here only 19 years, and they moved to Santas Creus. So Santas Creus was founded here in Valldaura, and then after the monks, the next step were the kings. So Valldaura was a royal palace for the kings of Catalonia from Jaume II until Fernando el Católico, until 1475. And then the kings, it was kind of a story, and they left, they give to someone, and then after the kings came the nobles. The nobles were running Valldaura as a kind of a small municipality during more than 400 years. And then after the French Revolution, the nobles fall down, and then came the industrials. And there was an industrial that bought to a noble that was in a kind of decadence, and then someone called Francesc Guardiola built that house in 1888. That is the year of the first Universal Exhibition in Barcelona. And then the industrials were doing well, they were building, running the place, and then what happened with this man is that somehow he died without descendants or whatever, and then he sold to someone and we were able to buy. So somehow you can find here a beautiful story that, if we are right, is the story of monks, kings, nobles, industrials, and now researchers. So we would like that this part of the story is true, and that's why we are fighting so hard in order to show that this economy of innovation is possible to develop here. The main idea here is to say very directly, in California, Elon Musk and other people are developing the self-driving cars. So Elon Musk, that brought the digital technologies to the physical world, didn't went to General Motors and ask, hey, could I improve your car? And then General Motors, as a normal developer, will say to the architect, yeah, you can decide the color of the car, or you can start to do some upgrades of the lighting with some LED. LED is cool, you can do. But then Elon Musk say, no, I'm going to reinvent the whole industry. We are going to reinvent the whole industry about how we move in the territory. Today, Bjarke will talk maybe about the Hyperloop, how we do the self-driving car. But then I understand that in America, they will invent the self-driving car. But the self-sufficient building should be invented here in Barcelona. We have a tradition of inventing the city of the future. We have the tradition of making great architecture since the Romans or the Gothic architecture and so on. And then the question is that our commitment is to try to not only to invent, because somehow IAAC proved that was right so many times. We were right with the digital fabrication, we were right with the Internet of Things, we were right with the energy self-sufficiency, and now we want to to move to the industrial side, and we want to start to build and to make it real. So if we wanted to be right, we are right. But now it's not only about to be right, but it's about to change the world. Because after all the global agreements about global warming and everything, all the mayors are saying we should change the cities. But it's very difficult to do it because changes are really very difficult. So what we would like, and that's why we invite you here, because we were looking the smartest people around in order to try to figure out to make an alliance and to explain you that we want to work in this direction. The plan here in Valldaura is we'll do three things. We are launching a master that this is the best way to find young people that can join us and learn with us, etc. The second layer will be we are doing an incubator of entrepreneurs, as some people that you saw downstairs, and we want to have more people inventing. So this is an entrepreneur for ecological projects, okay? And the third layer is that we will start to create a startup following the idea that, architects, we are a little bit tired somehow of waiting for the right client. Now we need really to push the industry in the startup mode, not asking General Motors, please, can I design you a new car, but doing by ourselves. So, and obviously, in order to do this, we need to have the right alliance with the right people, and that's why we are here. So, obviously, we share this vision with Bjarke. He's doing amazing projects. As you know, he's from Denmark. He did incredible housing projects there, then he moved to New York, and he's doing amazing projects all over the world, but where he really wants to live is in Barcelona. Exactly. So, and that's why he finds every kind of excuse to come here. He's trying to open an office and to do everything. You know, we are in beginning of March, look at the weather, it's quite amazing. So that's why Bjarke is with us here. We have also Daniel Ibañez. Daniel is the co-director of the master. He was here because we launched a call some years ago about the self-sufficient housing, and among 500 projects, he won the competition. And yeah, it's a long story. He did a master and Harvard. He is finishing the PhD. So he's one of the emerging Madrilenian values that he loves to live with us here in Barcelona or wherever. So that's all. That's the introduction. What we propose is Bjarke that he explains some of his projects during 45 minutes, After that, we'll have a lunch, and after that, we will walk around and, yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Bjarke.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Very good. Yeah, very exciting little history lesson. Also, maybe just to add to the history of Barcelona from a personal point of view, I am actually, like Vicente is saying, more interested in living in Barcelona than maybe anywhere else, and I think this started because I was actually studying at ETSAP in 20 years ago exactly. 10 minuti. I was actually about to the perfect timing because I actually studied a semester with Miralles at the fall of 1996, and I think ever since then I've been looking for an excuse to come back, and I think now we are closer than ever. We actually have a few projects that are still under wraps, but that we're working on here in the city that I'm looking much forward to talking about eventually. So also to prepare, I have 16 partners now, and I'm bringing them all to Valldaura for a partner meeting in 3 weeks. So we're going to be living like monks or kings, kings or researchers. Yeah, so Vicente was suggesting that maybe I could show some of our latest projects, and I thought maybe I would try to almost like show a little evolution of ideas. Looking at the practice, I started the company 17 years ago, and basically I think one of the sort of attitudes we have is this idea of like trying to think about our cities as man-made ecosystems. So where we don't only design good-looking facades or sculpture volumes, but we actually try to channel the flow of resources as well as people through our cities and buildings. We're located in New York and Copenhagen. We have a small office in London. And I think also typically for offices, this is a former Carlsberg factory where they used to make the least exciting part of the beer, the bottle cap. But the amazing thing about these industrial heritage spaces is that you have amazing ceiling heights. You have gigantic windows to bring in daylight, because daylight is for free. So there's a certain effectiveness and a freedom in these industrial buildings that can be reinvented. I have very passionate and committed colleagues, which is not unimportant, because when you're trying to do things slightly differently, you will encounter a lot of reasons why not to do it. You have to go through a lot of obstacles, and if you're not really passionate about what you're doing, you will eventually give up and cave in. And maybe one last thing, like a little language lesson. In Danish, the word for design is formgivning, which literally means to give form to something that has not yet been given form. So when the world is changing, when there's some transformation happening, and that transformation often comes from technology, but it sometimes comes from immigration. It can be climate change, it can be cultural change, it can be demographic change, it can be financial change, economic change. Wherever the change is coming from, the way that the world that we have created to accommodate the way that the world is suddenly won't really fit, because there's new kinds of people, new kinds of cultures emerging. And then if we as architects can be observant and identify those moments where changes happen, we actually have an opportunity to give form to the future. And I think it's quite interesting when you look back at the last 17 years of our practice. We've been consistently interested in certain ideas, and I'll try to skate through those ideas quite rapidly and maybe arrive at certain things where lately we're feeling that a lot of the things that have been interesting us over the last 17 years suddenly come to completion in a much more holistic way. But maybe sort of one way to describe our work is also we try to find parameters around the project that can give form to the project, like knowledge that can inform our design decisions. We did a small extension of my old high school in Copenhagen. So it's football fields where we put some classrooms under the spectator stands. And then we had to do a sports hall. And we could either place it on the football fields, but soccer is like the favorite sport of the Danes. We're not as good as the Spanish, but we try. We still like it at least. So it would be suicide to put it there. So we proposed to put it in the courtyard, but the courtyard is the main social space for the kids. So we had to bury it, but when you start digging, the deeper you go, the more expensive it gets. So it was going to be a handball hall. And the rules of handball, they say you need 4 meters on the perimeter and 7.5 meters in the middle. So also because our client was my old math teacher, we based the sort of the curvature of the roof on the mathematical formula for a ballistic arch. And of course she liked it. So basically the sports hall and the graceful curvature is not designed by us. It's literally just tracing the arc of a thrown handball. Upstairs it creates this kind of social hill that in a way, even though you could see it as an obstacle, it actually becomes an invitation. The janitor of the school says that we have tripled the use of the courtyard because he had to put up 3 times as many waste bins because more students make more mess. And of course, like it's the sort of the echo of what happens underground that creates the architecture. Another example about how the circumstances can form the design, we did a sculpture park in Norway, or we did a museum in a sculpture park. It's on 2 sides of a river, and we could place the museum anywhere we wanted. And we said, what if we turn the museum into a bridge? So it becomes part of the journey. So when you walk through the sculpture park, you'll arrive into the museum. The skylights of the sculpture gallery becomes panoramic windows overlooking the mill, and then you continue your journey. So in a way, you can see it as a hybrid between a building, a bridge, and almost a sculpture in its own right, maybe the biggest sculpture in the park. So as you move around in certain circumstances, you won't even notice that it's a building. It just broke ground and it's going to open in a year and a half. So these were sort of basically the ideas, but like once you've identified what a project is all about, you haven't found the answer yet. You only have found the question. So then you need to make a lot of experimentation. And so that you need to test models. So we build a lot of models, and sometimes we even build models at very large scale, and sometimes we use Lego, the national product of Denmark. Even the signage in our office is made out of Lego. At some point, Lego asked us if we wanted to try to do a home for the Lego brick, as kind of experience building. And this is what a room typically looks like once the design process is done. A lot of evidence, a lot of ideas, a lot of physical tests until you arrive at something. In this case, we then submitted the model for the competition in the form of a Lego model. When we wanted, we made a slightly bigger model. It became a little harder to build it. And then we made it even bigger. This is the real size. And essentially what we try to do, we try to capture what to us is important about Lego, is that Lego is not a toy, it's a tool. It's a tool that empowers the child to create their own world and then to inhabit that world through play and to invite others to join them in co-creating and co-inhabiting that world. And I think at its most interesting, that's what architecture is all about. It's about creating the world that we want to live in and then making it happen. So we also made it so that it's inviting. You can walk up the building. The entire roof is an interconnected playscape. So even if you don't have a ticket to the museum, you can actually hang around on the roof. It becomes like an inviting structure. You can also enter into the building from all corners. It has a square that is also public. Light comes in between the different elements. The future generations can roam around, protected from the Danish rain. And upstairs, finally, if you buy a ticket, you can ascend along this. This Lego tree is actually the largest Lego artifact in the world, 12 million bricks. And then you can explore different aspects of Lego as you move around, both inside and outside. You have different exhibits. It's probably the only museum in the world where you are allowed to touch the artifacts. And then maybe finally that you can descend into, underneath, you have a treasure chamber where you have some of the most historical pieces or sets of Lego, including my first Lego set, the Yellow Castle from 1979, very important. And then of course maybe one of the most important also, you can actually buy the Lego house. So I think as an architect, I've achieved the highest honor you can achieve as a Danish architect at least, is to see your own creation in Lego. Another thing that we've been sort of looking at over the last decade and a half, let's say, is the notion of sustainability and maybe an attempt to try to change, because especially like 15 years ago, sustainability was really seen as a necessary compromise, almost like taking cold showers in the morning. So we thought, like, what if sustainability and sustainable cities and buildings could actually make life more enjoyable? The first time we sort of materialized it was we did the Danish pavilion in Shanghai, right next to Benedetta's Spanish pavilion. And the subject of Shanghai was sustainable cities, and we thought, what if we make a Danish streetscape complete with the elements that make Danish cities not only more sustainable, but also more enjoyable? So we had the blue bicycle lanes of Copenhagen, we had the city bikes. For the last 25 years, Copenhagen has had city bikes for free. You could bike through the city. So we allowed the visitors to experience the thrill of riding a bike through the city instead of being stuck in a traffic jam. Also meaning you could do the whole museum in 5 minutes, making it the perfect museum for impatient people. Also, at the heart of the pavilion, our first project in Copenhagen was the Copenhagen Harbor Bath, which is basically because Copenhagen port has become so clean that you can swim in it. So a clean port is not only good for the fish, it's great for the citizens because you don't have to drive for hours to get to the beach. You can actually jump into the port in the middle of the city. And we recreated that experience in Shanghai, allowing the Chinese to feel how clean, if not how cold, Danish harbor water is. And then we were trying to find a way to bring the Chinese to actually come and experience it. And we were looking for common denominators between Denmark and China. And we found that in the Chinese public school curriculum, they have 3 fairy tales by Hans Christian Andersen. One of them is the story of the Little Mermaid, the national symbol of Denmark. So we proposed to bring the mermaid to China for 6 months. The Danish Nationalist Party freaked out. So I had to go to Parliament and argue her case. But as you can see, we got her. Then we had to get her through Chinese customs. And finally, we got her into the pavilion. As an exchange, we invited Ai Weiwei to make an art piece in her absence. And he actually installed a Chinese surveillance camera in the pavilion. It's the same camera that the Chinese state had installed in front of his house. But this one was transmitting an image to where she normally sits in Copenhagen. So not only could the tourists who went in vain see that she was fine, she was just somewhere else, but also it became like a loophole in the Great Firewall of China. For 6 months, it was the only uncensored TV feed leaving the People's Republic. So that was our first venture into hedonistic sustainability. Right after, we actually got invited to and won a competition to do the headquarters for Shenzhen's main energy company. It's 100,000 square feet of workspace in a tropical climate. So you want to maximize views in daylight. You want to minimize thermal exposure and glare. So we designed the facade like a pleated dress that's as open as possible, facing north, as closed as possible facing south, or the predominant sun orientation. So when you look towards the south, you see bamboo walls washed in daylight. When you look more to the north, it's all transparent. The building is just completing now. It's opening in 2 months. So from some angles, it's entirely glass. From other angles, it's almost entirely opaque. And within this logic, you can create larger openings. You can create sort of adaptations to the site specifics. You can create main entrances, but always maximizing the glass facing away from the sun and the opacity facing the sun. So it ends up getting like this almost like graceful elegance, but it also reduces the energy consumption with 30%. So there's no special technology. It's purely the geometry of the facade that reduces the need for cooling. And almost as an extension of the idea of hedonistic sustainability, you could call this aesthetic sustainability, that what makes this building look different is also what makes it perform differently. And another thing that I think is quite relevant, and especially in urban settings, is a notion we've called architectural alchemy, that by mixing traditional programs in untraditional ways, you can create, if not gold, then at least added value. We did a building in Copenhagen called the 8 House. It's on the edge of the city. You literally have a cattle on the other side. It's a bit like Valldaura, but in a flat country. So on the other side of this lake, it's outside the city. So we really wanted to, it's a mixture of shops, offices, institutions, and homes. So we try to mix the ingredients as much as possible. So you have townhouses sitting on top of the commercial programs. Shops and offices, they like to be close to the customers. We put them on the ground. You have, on top, you have like a man-made path townhouses. You have offices in the shadow, lifting the homes up into the sunlight. So in that sense, not only can you sort of optimize the conditions for each program, but you also extend the possibility for social encounters up through the three-dimensional space of the city. So these two girls live on the 7th and the 9th floor, but they can actually walk down. So you have like a small, almost like village-like community, but in the middle of a large urban setting. Also, sometimes when you're doing a project, it inspires you to get another idea that is somehow informed by the first project. So we're doing almost like a sister project to the 8 House in Copenhagen. In Amsterdam, but almost 8 House upside down. It's a city block in the port of Amsterdam that is lifted so that it extends the port into the courtyard. You can actually dock your boat if your mast is less than 14 meters. Also, the 8 House made a developer in New York notice us. And he invited us to look at making a building on the west side of Manhattan. It's quite far away from Central Park. It's surrounded by a sanitation garage, power plant, and the West Side Highway. So we thought what they really need is an oasis. And basically this is the courtyard building in Copenhagen where my dad grew up. And you can say that the typical European courtyard is at the architectural scale of what Central Park is at the urban scale. An oasis in the middle of the city. So we thought, what happens when you combine the density of a skyscraper with the communal space of a courtyard? Or what could a courtscraper look like? So basically, the sort of European typology, given the density and the height of a high-rise, still keeping the southwest low so you get sunlight and views. This was our first sort of scale model. This is what it looks like today. But essentially, like let's say, it actually has the exact same proportions as Central Park, only it is 13,000 times smaller than Central Park. But essentially it creates this sort of a sanctuary in the middle of the busy city of New York. And it also means that when you sort of combine these two typologies, the courtyard and the skyscraper, it actually generates an architectural form that again is not really imposed by us, but more discovered by us. As we try to make both elements work. So this project gave rise to a series of, because you know, Denmark, Copenhagen, the tallest building is 6 floors practically. So we never really worked with high rises, but like a little bit further down, you have the High Line, which is this new like former train tracks that have been transformed into the second most popular park in New York. And we were asked to do a large office building. So we thought, what's interesting about the High Line is that it has all these very intimate spaces. It's quite reduced in scale. So we thought, what if you could extend the High Line into the skyline? So basically where the High Line ends, we continue it up along our building, which means that you end up, each floor ends up having a small dedicated outdoor space. It also has a small double height space that actually means that you have this sort of cascading connection, so that each floor is actually connected to all the floors below and all the floors above. Of course, if you work on the 30th floor, you're going to take the elevator up. But when you have to speak with a colleague who's sitting 3 floors down, you can actually sometimes even see them, or you can just take the stairs down. And of course also extend outside. So in a way it's trying to mitigate the segregation that you have between one level and the next, and also try to